We'll be starting in just a second. Got the wrong title up there, but whatever. Okay. You guys were so here and organized and ready to go. It kind of took me. That's nice to see. So thank you for coming. I won't make you do it sounds like you were doing introductions, but maybe we should do it one more time because not everybody was here.
Yep.
I'll start. My name is Matthew Pruitt. I'm the Employee and Technology Services Director with the City of Bothell. I started at the city about 7 years ago. My job when I started was HR Director, and that's still up there apparently. But a year ago, we combined some administrative departments, mostly HR and IT, and I'm now in charge of that department. We've changed the name of the department. This is my third salary commission here at the city of Bothell. I really appreciate all of you being here and those of you that have chosen to volunteer for this. It's an important role and sometimes goes a little bit unrecognized as far as the different boards and commissions that are happening at the city, but we have, I think we'll have 4 or 5 meetings of really good discussion, and I look forward to working with you.
Okay. Hello all, my name is Heicho. I'm the recruitment coordinator here in the HR division. I've been here at the city about 2 years and maybe like 3 months. So I'm fairly new. It's my first board and commission meeting. So I'm happy to learn the process as well. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm Alexandra Sheeks. I am a consultant with Cabot Dow Associates, and we've been hired by the city to help facilitate the commission work.
I'm Rosemary Sutton. I'm a resident of Bothell, and this is my third salary commission as well.
Have you been on all of them with me?
Apparently, the
Yeah,
answer
apparently.
is yes. And that's enough. I was just saying, I was on a Zoom call this afternoon, and I've got one after this, and I'm retired, so this is all just too much for me. Really.
Hi everyone, my name is Yumna Shamim. I am a resident of Bothell. This is my first time volunteering for any board or commission, so this is exciting. I do have a background in risk management with like a specialty in employee benefits, so this is kind of what I used to do when I was working, but I'm no longer working, so this is nice to kind of keep doing something that keeps me engaged, but also for the greater good. Yes.
I'm Lauren. I am a Bothell resident, lived in the area for about 10 years now, a political consultant by day. So I typically work with like community-based organizations, nonprofits, doing communications and organizational management. So for me, I have vested interest in being able to bring different people to office. So I think that this is really an interesting involvement for me. And yeah, really like political work. So.
Great. Okay, so this is our first meeting, so we're going to start a little informal here. It's mostly a discussion, talk about how we have done things in the past, what the salary commission is, what we need from you, and at the end we'll talk about scheduling future meetings, things of that nature. The first time we need to do to sort of formalize things is we need a chair of the salary commission. Rosemary has done that role before. It's not too difficult of a role. It mostly means that you chair the meetings. We go by a hybrid kind of Robert Rules of Order. We're not really formal like the city council with the salary commission, but you know, the chair does recognize who speaks and make sure that we're following the agenda and meets with Hay and I before the meeting to talk about the agenda and what we need to accomplish, things of that nature. And so not too much more work, but maybe a tiny bit. And so I'll leave that discussion up to the three of you and you can figure that out. And if you have any questions of me, let me know. But if anybody of you are interested, now would be a good time to say so.
I don't mind doing it again. It's really easy. I mean, you can do it next time.
I'm okay with Rosemary doing it.
No objections from me.
Okay, Rosemary, you're in charge.
Well, I'm not. I just want to make sure I'm not. We didn't get your name.
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
We also didn't get the full story, which I think we should hear.
Okay.
As a former teacher, I would like us all to hear the full story.
I am Jesse Lewis. I am a senior at Lake Stevens High School. And I'm here for a civics assignment in my civics class. It's called the Civics Engagement Project, where I need to go to a school board meeting or a city meeting or just something civics related. And unfortunately, I've missed all the dates for the Lake Stevens ones. I've been in track season and stuff and
Football, track.
football and all this stuff. So it's due tomorrow.
No.
Emailed my teacher last night saying like, hey, I don't know what I can do because the school board was yesterday.
Yeah.
But then he sent me the link to this and now I'm here.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. And good luck on tonight's report.
Yeah.
I'm Dan, I'm Scott Lewis. I have a business here in Bothell, so I support Bothell. And we live in Lake Stevens and I'm just here to support him.
Lake Stevens is a wonderful community. If you never need any connections with any of the city folks up there.
Yeah.
I know their HR director really well. They're good group. Great city that's grown a lot.
I've been out there 24 years, so
Yeah.
I mean, from Vernon Little when he was mayor, he's
Yeah.
been over with him. And,
Yeah.
you know, Brent Gailey now, good group of guys.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and gals too. So.
Thank you. I just wanted to make, I'm not sure everybody had heard all the stories.
That's,
Besides, I like making students tell stories.
yeah.
What business are you in?
I have a wholesale flooring business in Canyon Park called ProSource.
Very cool.
We've been there since 1991. So a lot of changes, you know, in the business park and the roads and trying to get back and forth to Lake Stevens for all those years, but
Yeah.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you for choosing to have your business in Bothell. Please grow it.
Yeah.
So the next thing on the agenda says staff presentation and discussion, and I'm not sure who's doing that, but I'm sure we'll find out.
Yep. Okay, so this will be fairly short this year, and I'll run through it. And if you have any questions, just feel free to stop me at any point that you don't, no need to wait till the end or anything like that. Okay, so our agenda for this meeting is chair election, which successful, we did. Staff presentation, which we're doing. After the staff presentation, Alexandra would, and all of us would like to have a discussion with you about like, what information do you think you need to help you in making a decision? And I'll talk to you a bit more about what that decision is in this presentation. Because what will happen next is we'll go away and get that information and bring it back to you and have further discussions at another meeting. And then you need to direct us to exactly what it is that you want, and we'll talk about the schedule for next meeting before we wrap up for today. What do city council members do? That's not an easily responded to question. It depends on the council member, their interests, what they would like to do. Legally, they show up at meetings and vote on resolutions, ordinances, different items before the city. They attend council meetings. They have approximately 3 council meetings per month. It's supposed to go 2 business meetings, 1 study session. It hardly ever works out that way. They get mixed together often because we need a study session for some reason, or we need to do business for another reason. But they go to 3 city council meetings a month. The council meetings are approximately, I would say on average, 2.5 to 3 hours long. Sometimes they're 5 or 6, sometimes they're an hour or 2. It just depends on the business that they have to consider. But they do those 3 meetings a month, and sometimes on the 4th Monday or 4th Tuesday, they have a special meeting. So sometimes it's 4 meetings a month. It just depends on what's going on. For example, they're meeting for a special meeting coming up because the city manager is getting a performance appraisal, and they all 7 have to do that together. They have executive and closed sessions. Usually that's because an attorney has something to talk to them about that they can't disclose publicly just yet. And so it's a legal matter. Sometimes it's me in labor negotiations. State law prohibits us from discussing labor strategy, what's going on, negotiation sessions, unless there's an agreement between both parties to do so. So we do those in executive closed session before the contract is voted on. There's other reasons they have executive and closed sessions, but those are the main two. They have lots of reading to do. They get packets that are that big, and they get them the Thursday or Friday before they meet, and they have till Tuesday to read them. So it's a lot of information they consume. Some of them read the packets cover to cover, and they have read everything in the packet. Some of them, it's a different approach. Some things they read real specifically. Some things they don't. It depends on the council member, what they feel like they need. They represent the city at community groups, different community organizations throughout the community. This is not a required duty. It is something most of them do, and some do more than others. It just depends. But they also attend regional board meetings. There's lots of regional meetings throughout the Puget Sound region, the Puget Sound Regional Council. There's regional meetings on what we do with the watershed, why we're 8 down here. There's regional meetings on transportation. There's regional meetings on there's mayor meetings. There's all sorts of meetings, and they go to those meetings and then they report back. And they all serve. This is one where they all do this, and they all have 3 or 4 regional meetings that they go to, probably on a monthly basis. So that it's a lot of work outside of just their one council meeting a week. They answer constituent inquiries. Some of them are very active and do this like on social media, and they're very out there in the public. Some respond to their emails and they're less engaged in those types of tools. It depends on their preference, but they have lots of questions that are asked of them. And sometimes it's an overwhelming amount. Like, for example, if an issue comes up it's important to the community, I would say the middle housing discussion that we just had in Bothell, there were lots of questions from the community, and I'm sure a lot of them were engaging on a day-to-day basis with different groups and community members. They meet with the city manager weekly or bi-weekly. The old city manager was weekly. They met weekly on the dot every week. This city manager, sometimes they don't meet as regularly. And that's just what they work out between him and whatever member is he's meeting with. And then they appoint board and commission members, like the 3 of you. Actually, the salary commission is a bit different. It's appointed by the mayor and approved by the council, but most boards and commissions are done by vote of the council. So they have to come to conclusions as a body on who to appoint to the planning commission, the parks commission, all the various boards and commissions we have at the city. Any questions about what a council member does? So the mayor is a different position that is it's recognized. It has been recognized in the past by the salary commission. It's paid a different salary because it is a larger set of duties. We have what's called the council form of government. What that means is the mayor is not the CEO of the city. The city manager is the CEO of the city. The mayor is like the chairman of the board. That's the best way I can describe it without a better way to describe it. The mayor runs the meetings, assists with setting the council agenda. The mayor probably does meet with the city manager weekly, and maybe some weeks more than that, because as things affects the council agenda, they want to talk about when to do it, put it on the agenda, when might that be best, or if not, to put it on the agenda for whatever reason. And so there's more frequent meetings between the city manager and the mayor than there are most council members. The mayor has some extra duties. He appoints the salary commission. That's one extra duty, but there are specific duties that are assigned to the mayor sometimes, depending on the situation. But definitely more involved in some decision making than the average council member. He's responsible for council leadership. And that's kind of like depending on the mayor. The mayor is sort of like the figurehead spokesperson out in front, lead of, the council often is thought of that way by the community, by regional organizations, by, Like the other day, the Associations of Washington Cities needed an appointment for a board that they were working on, and they work with the mayors to do that. That's something that, you know, he would be involved in, or she, depending on who the mayor is, as opposed to just council members. And they also may have duties, increased duties representing the city. The mayor may have a bigger log of that than most council members. I would say that that's changing a little bit. So I would say 3 or 4 years ago, the mayor was definitely a different, more involved role. With this council, they're all 7 really engaged. And so there isn't that noticeable difference in time being spent here at the city and doing other things on behalf of the city. They're all very engaged and very, very involved as a group. We also have a deputy mayor. The Salary Commission, I'll talk about this in a second, but the Salary Commission for the first time recognized the deputy mayor as a separate position from the council members. So we have a stipend for the mayor, a stipend for the deputy mayor, and a stipend for the city council member. Before, it just used to be the mayor and the city council member and the city council members. The deputy mayor primarily is the backup to the mayor. If the mayor is not there, the deputy mayor runs the meeting. If the mayor can't make it to an event, the deputy mayor might represent the mayor in an event. It depends on the timing, it depends on how involved the mayor is, it depends on a lot of things, but there's really no like assigned like difference between what a mayor does or what a deputy mayor does and a city council member. It just depends on what the mayor wants and needs, what the council wants and needs, things of that nature. So it's not really a defined role, but it is something they elect and sort of a backup position for the mayor. And sorry, so why is there a salary commission? There's a salary commission because there's a state law that allows it. Salary commissions can be set by ordinance. In other words, the state law says that cities can create a salary commission by passing an ordinance that creates one. The members must be appointed by the mayor with council approval, which is a little odd. That's not how usually boards and commissions are appointed, but the state law specifically for this one says that the mayor makes that appointment. Membership may not include city officers, employees, elected officials, or family members for obvious reasons. Any changes made will be filed with the city clerk's office and absorbed immediately with the budget. So what happens is if you all decide at the end of this to make a change, it's literally made the next day. There's no discussion. There's no, I tell the city clerk, this is what it is. We tell payroll, this is how to change it, and it gets done. That's how it works. We don't talk about how it impacts the budget. We don't talk about anything. It gets changed. That's what the state law requires. And then salary decreases. So if you change to an increase, I said changes. What I meant is increases. Increases are immediately. If you decide, you can decide, for instance, to decrease the salary of the city council member. And if you do that, then basically that decrease goes in after the next term of the council member expires. So they don't have that immediate downgrade in salary. And changes are subject to voter referendum. I've never heard or seen that happen. No voters have ever questioned that I know of and asked for a referendum on the changes made to a salary commission's decision. There was one city where that was talked about a lot recently, but not something that's usual through this process. But it can happen. A member of the community can file a referendum and essentially ask for a vote on the commission's changes. But you might have a question.
Just one person can trigger that?
I believe so. I don't know specifically the process. There may be a signature gathering process.
There ought to be, one would think, but that doesn't mean there is.
Yeah. So our ordinance that we adopted to create the salary commission is chapter 2.92. The ordinance says there's 3 members. We could have 5 or 7, but when they created the salary commission, they settled on 3. You meet every 2 years. That was actually changed recently. Rosemary was on a commission. We used to meet every 6 years, and Rosemary was on a commission that decided really this is something we should look into more often. And so we now meet every 2 years. Majority vote rules. So if 2 of you feel like there's a direction you want to go, that's enough to take that direction. Meetings are open to the public. And until tonight, We've not ever had one, so that's great.
We're making history.
Yeah, you are. That's pretty awesome, actually.
That's perfect for your report, actually.
And then,
Good.
if you decide to change something, so if you increase or decrease, or do something that's different than what it is today, there has to be what's called a public hearing, which means essentially we have a meeting, our final meeting, where the changes you're considering are brought up. We discuss them if you want to. You don't have to, but you could. Usually the commission does. And we make a little extra effort to let the public know that there's a hearing and they're welcome to come give their feedback. We also tell council members, if you want to give your feedback on the decision that they're considering, this is the meeting to do it. They usually run from that as quick as possible. They don't really want to be involved in discussions about their own salary. Can't blame them. And we've never, again, had a member of the public show up and say, I think this is a good decision or bad decision. And we've tried. 2 commissions ago, we were very adamant. We were going to put it on Facebook and Twitter, and we were going to really try to get members of the public there. And we spent about a week doing that, and nothing. But we have made efforts in the past to include the public more in this process. The last decision that was made by the Salary Commission was 2 years ago. They increased pay for council members to $1,525 per month. I should have showed you what it was before, but I believe it was somewhere around $1,300. So they made a modest increase to council members. They, for the first time, recognized the deputy mayor as a separate position and gave the deputy mayor a stipend of $1,425 per month. And they gave the mayor
That's wrong.
backwards. That's backwards. So the top one is the mayor, and the bottom one, sorry about that. And the bottom one is a council member. So the mayor makes $1,525 a month, and council members make $1,300 per month as a stipend. It's like a paycheck. It has taxes and everything else related to it, and it comes to them like an employee paycheck does. They can put it in a bank account. It's direct deposited, and all the associated taxes of being an employee of the city apply for federal law or state law. The other thing they are eligible to do as far as compensation is they can sign up and contribute to an ICMA 457 deferred compensation plan at no cost to the city. What that means is employees, for example, we have a match for. So first of all, let me explain. 457 deferred comp plan is like a 401k for the private sector. It's just for the public sector. I mean, it's just basically a different law. So it's a 457. Council members don't get a match, but they can basically take the monthly stipend and put it into this account and put it towards their retirement. And some of them do that. I would say it's 2 or 3 of them now that does that. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, that's changed. They never used to do this, but the commission decided they could, and a couple of them have taken us up on it. So this is the process that we are proposing. Sorry, the lettering on the blue boxes I'm looking at for this screen is not that noticeable. This is how we have operated in the past. It's not anything that's different, but you don't have to follow this process. You can come up with a different one if you want. The first meeting is kind of the same as what we're doing today. The second meeting is usually we come back to you with some data and information. You ask questions and maybe get to a preliminary decision. Sometimes that takes 1 meeting. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3. It depends on the commission and the questions they have and the data that we present. So we have as many meetings as it takes for you to get to a preliminary decision. And at that time, when you come to a preliminary decision, we notify the city council, city staff, and I don't mean all city staff, the ones that need to know essentially, and then the public. And we tell them that the salary commission's made a made preliminary decisions and we're gonna have a public hearing on such and such date. And then the final meeting is that public hearing. We offer the public who doesn't attend a chance to provide feedback to you. And city council members have that same opportunity at that meeting. And then you deliberate if you want to, and have more discussion, and then you vote. And the next day, what you've decided on, if it's a change, an increase goes specific, it's implemented. If you make no decision, so if you come, oh, we're gonna have battery issues in a second, but that's okay because I'm done. Actually, we're not. Can you pull this up? Thank you. I'm gonna have Hay share it, but I'll talk for a second while she's doing that. If you make no decision, which is an entirely possibility, basically at the end of that process of you coming to a preliminary decision, we're done. We just stop. And I say, no decision, everything's the same. And so there's no reason for a public hearing, no need for a vote, no need to notify the council or anything. Everything just remains the same. That has happened in 2020. The salary commission is a little bit more difficult. Things were going on in 2020. I don't remember what it was though. But we had some budget concerns, and the salary commission just decided this wasn't really a time for us to talk about the salary of our elected officials, and they elected not to do anything. And we had like one meeting, and that was it. But entirely up to you guys as to where we go with this in the future. Sorry, do I have to stop sharing?
No, I got it.
Thank you. In the past, how we have come to the decision, how the salary commission has come to their decision, with the exception of the 1 year where they were like, we don't even think we should discuss this year. We don't think it's appropriate. One of the reasons we did that year is the city made layoffs that year because of budget concerns related to COVID-19. And the commission just decided it wasn't right to have the conversation at that time. But outside of those years, how we usually gather data is we gather data based upon how we do it for most other city positions of the city. And the reason we do that is because we are a unionized workforce. I would say 65% of our workforce is unionized, and there is a best practice to consider, best practices to consider for how you look at salaries for unionized positions. And it comes from the Public Employees Relations Commission. The way we do it is we look at cities within 50 to 150% of valuation, property taxes, and population. We also like to look at cities that are primarily in Snohomish, King, and Pierce County and along the I-5 corridor. And we come up with a list, and I'll show you that list in a second. This process is used for everybody, city manager, everybody at the city. The one exception is firefighters. And the reason there's an exception is because when you use this criteria for firefighters, there are no longer cities that fit in these categories that have their own fire department. That's just most cities have created fire districts or regional fire authorities or have done other things to have fire services within their city. And so firefighters have a little bit of a different process. We look at fire districts for them and other entities and we're come up with market data for them. But other than firefighters, everybody else uses this as far as how we look at their salary and determine if the salary is correct or not. Go to the next slide.
Is it population size or is it demographics?
It's population size. And so when you do that, when you apply those principles that I just gave to you, the list that you come up with is right there. We sometimes use all these cities. We sometimes use 8 or 10 of them. Depends on the bargaining group. It depends on what they look at. But these cities are what we look at. And essentially what we do is we look at positions that are like the positions we have here at the city in these cities. And we look at what folks are paid for. And generally what the city tries to do is it tries to get above the market, but within 5%, if that makes sense. So so for instance, if you're looking at like the HR director, and with all these cities, there's 10 HR directors, we try to get just above the median, but not too much above. That's our strategy. We want to be competitive. We want to hire good people. We want people to have equitable wages and compensation packages. And that's how the city has determined over the long run how to best do that. There's been different philosophies, but right now that's where we're at. We try to get just above the average, but less than 5%. You can use this process. You can tell us you don't want to. It's entirely up to you. You can make changes to it. What I will tell you is that this is pretty standard practice within most municipalities in our region. This is something that's commonly used. Next slide. Some of the other considerations that you could think about or have been discussed. Rosemary has had discussions about these issues, some of these issues in the past. Consistent treatment within city workforce. Having a process that determines a city employee's wage be one thing, and then the city council members be another thing, might create corruption with labor groups. Like, why? You can't do that for us. You do that for your city council members, things of that nature. So we try to be consistent and fair throughout the organization. Because it impacts labor negotiations and other things. The other thing is the economy. The last salary commissions have talked a lot about the economy, what are conditions. The year that they decided to not make a decision, that was mostly because of economic reasons and what was going on at the time. And they felt like it didn't make sense for them to change anything about compensation for council members at that time. Expectations of the community. And it's a big, diverse community, so how you determine what the expectations of the entire community are, good luck. But you're all representatives of the community. You have thoughts on that, and that's why you're here. We have talked about the budget. I will tell you, though, unless you make an extremely different change, what you do here is not going to impact the budget. So it's.
What's the budget for the year for the city?
Oh, man.
Do we know roughly
Top of my head.
within $1 million?
Within $1 million?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's fine.
Probably tell you.
I want to say 65. I want to say 65 million. But I'm not the finance director. But council pay
It's trivial
does not.
in terms of the big scheme.
Right. It doesn't impact things. Mostly, I think when the budgets come up, it's been the current environment of the city and not whether or not your decision is going to break the budget or not. And then a new issue that I added this bullet to this issue, it has come up. It's an interesting discussion. We've seen the discussions about access to running for office and equity come up. It's come up with the city of Kirkland. It's come up with the city of Redmond. I don't know everything about those stories, but if you have questions about it, I can answer some of those questions. And the issue here, and it's come up in Bothell too, Rosemary's been part of discussions where we've kind of asked, really what we want, what the community desires and what the commission desires is that there be access to running for office, that we not leave that up to people who can simply afford to do it. And one way to balance that is to provide more compensation to elected officials. I would say that's very early in this discussion. The city of Redmond was going down this road and they were electing to drastically increase the compensation of their city council members. And before they could make that decision, the city council members disbanded them. In other words, they overturned their ordinance and the salary commission went away and no changes were made. Kirkland went down this road too, but they were more modest. I would say their increases were larger than what we would see out of salary commissions on average, but not at such a level that I guess the city council members felt the need to disband them. But it is an interesting discussion. It is, I would say this is these issues or issues like this are a big priority for this city council in particular. Ensuring fairness and equity throughout the community and access to government and access to being able to run for office. But you gotta, there's a balance between all these considerations, if that makes sense. That's all I got, and I'm going to be quiet now. Mostly what we want to do is to hear from you and to answer any of your questions that you might have on this process or the upcoming few months and as we do our work. But one thing I wanted to point out that I didn't want to point out, and I only bring this up because it almost impacted us the last time, is we have a 90-day deadline. Our deadline is around August 23rd. I hope that we can get it, that we can be well ahead of that deadline, but I don't know what kind of things you guys will bring up and discuss or you all will bring up and discuss, and I don't know, what kind of information you'll want. The last time we got right up to the deadline, it was mostly scheduling vacations and things of that nature. If we got to the 90-day deadline, we basically have to go ask the city council for more time, and they can choose to give us more time, or they can choose to say, nope, time's up. My suspicion is that they would give us more time if they asked, but I can't guarantee it. All right.
Alexander, would you like to add anything at the moment?
I can just give you a little bit of background on why we're here and all that. So,
I was gonna do that,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, I'm Alexander Sheeks with Cabot Dow Associates. We are a human resources consulting firm that primarily works with local governments. My personal background is I used to be in management with the city of Woodinville, so just your neighbor. And so I'm familiar with this area and the workings of government in that sense. So one of our primary kind of zones that we work in is with employee compensation. So as Matthew mentioned, working with labor unions, working with city management, doing employee compensation studies, that's the zone that we work with and in. And so we're very comfortable in that. And our typical process for an employee salary or compensation study is we first look at the goal of the organization. So what is your goal? Is your goal to, attract employees and retain them? Is it your goal to pay above the market? Is your goal to conserve city resources? What is that goal that you're trying to accomplish? And we all know that money is a tool to accomplish that goal. So how does your compensation reflect that goal that you're trying to accomplish? And so I think that really goes hand in hand with what this commission is trying to do as well. What is the goal that you're trying to accomplish and how can you go about doing that? And then we go through a process very similar to what you would look at here as we look first at comparable organizations for that city. And that's a very kind of prescribed, recommended. We look at similarities in the size of population and the assessed valuation and revenues. Lately, we've been looking at the size of the budget, so comparing city budgets and as a measure of the activity that city is doing, how busy is it, what kind of responsibilities do we have, and matching those with other cities with similar levels of responsibility. And then from there, we go and we look at, in this case, the job descriptions of those organizations. It can be a little more nuanced with city employees, but with this particular job, it's very standardized across the board, I would say, with some differences here and there, of course. And then we compare details. So for employees, that includes things like salaries, paid leave, how much vacation and sick leave do they receive, what kind of health benefits do they receive, what kind of retirement benefits, do they have longevity, do they have uniform allowances, all those things that go into compensation. And then we compare them. And why do we compare them is because we need kind of a standard to which to measure ourselves against. We typically use the median because that can kind of smooth over things like outliers. If you do have a city that's paying really high or a city that's paying really low, or they have some unusual circumstances, that median amount will kind of smooth over those differences. So that's a metric that we are usually gearing towards in our studies. Of course, we have some different parameters for this particular work that we're looking at now. For example, if we look at the comparable cities, we need to balance, I think, consistency with the other employees, with the concerns of labor unions within the city. I also noticed that half of the cities in that list are strong mayor cities. They're a different structure of cities, so that's gonna be a little bit awkward in how we compare those. The main difference is that in a strong mayor city, the strong mayor is the CEO and kind of plays the role of the city manager. And so they are often paid the salary of a city manager, more or less in those situations. So that might be something to consider as we go and think about some of the data out there. So again, those are some of the things that we are looking at when we do our salary surveys. What we envision, I think, for this process is something not quite so in-depth as looking at all of those different items of compensation, but we are flexible. And so one of the things that we want to know from you is when, who do we want to compare to in the broad sense? And second of all, what kind of information are you looking for? It's important that as we go out and look at a survey that we ask questions consistently, that we get consistent information from all of the other cities that we're looking at. So we want to make sure that we're asking everybody the same thing. And if you have some specific questions that you want to know, that we be sure to include that. So I just threw a lot out there. I'm happy to answer questions or help facilitate the discussion that you have.
I have some questions, but in, I think, more general. So do we know how many city or council members there are in the city of Bothell besides the deputy mayor and the mayor?
Seven.
7?
Yeah, so there's five more.
5 and then the 2. And those 5, are those elected or are those appointed?
They're all elected.
They're all elected.
And they're all elected citywide. We don't have districts like some cities have gone to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
I think some of like the request for information that I would love to have is, if there are calculations on how much time is spent on average for weekly, monthly council related tasks. So the time, reading packets, how long the average council packet is, just page numbers would be just a good like data point for me to know. And then the average length of council meetings as well, to kind of like expect how many hours are actually being dedicated to this per month, compared to like the stipends that they get.
I'm going to make a suggestion. You two may have done this already. You can download the package go to the website and download it just to see the size of it.
I've looked at the size of them and I
It's
would
also
love to
very
have
technical. of
y'all
those.
do the calculation.
I agree with that.
The average.
But it's not speed reading.
Exactly.
If you're careful.
Yeah, so I know there are some where it's maybe a shorter session and it may only be like 12 pages or something like that. And then there are times where it is 125 pages plus about 300 of public comment.
Diagrams.
So would you be okay if we like looked the last 10 and gave you an average page number?
Sure.
Would that work? Okay. And can you go through those data points again, just so I can make sure?
Yeah, average time spent per week or month, depending on what makes sense on all council related tasks. Just kind of totaling up like what is the average time that council members actually spend working as a council member.
Yeah.
The length of the average council packet, and then the average length of council meetings. And I think, again, similar, the last 10, if you feel is representative, or if there's another 3 or 4 month period that is more representative of the average
Okay.
council. I know they go on leave for a portion of the summer, so please don't include that.
The one item that will be difficult on that list is the number of average hours spent on council duties, and the reason is because they don't report it. And so basically what I'm gonna do is email this to council members and say, the salary commission would like to know the average number of hours you work per week. And can you tell us what that is? And so that's how we will get that. That's really the only way I think we'll be able to get that data.
I think even as we begin to look at comparable cities, if that's a question that we want to ask other cities, that they would be more willing to share that information since it doesn't involve their salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can keep that as a continuing data point to look at.
Yeah, and one thing I'll also note is that and you may know this, but with public organizations, everything is public, every information is public. Salaries are known to anybody and anybody can ask for them. So there's nothing proprietary or anything about them. And that's why we're able to get so much data.
And so when you write to the city council members, can you ask them for in the last month how long they've spent? People are more likely to be accurate if you do it within a specific, not average for the year.
Yeah.
They have no idea what that means. But if you say in the last month, and if they could, briefly review the agenda.
The other thing with city council members is they will determine if I actually get that information back or not.
Yeah.
Most of the time I get all 7 of them, most of the time. Okay. Thank you for being here, by the way. I did mean to explain in my presentation, we've never used a consultant for this process before. And so we're very pleased to work with Cabot Dow and Associates in Alexander. It's very nice to have them here. The first reason is it's a lot of work. And it's nice to have somebody else do the work. The second reason is this was a recommendation made by the city manager because he felt like it was very important to have a third set of eyes on this data and to go gather this data, which is a point that I really appreciated. And so I think we're going to see, I think because of their expertise and their background in this, we'll get to see data that is much more, I hope better than maybe what we've seen in the past. And I'm happy to have them here helping us.
So the last 2 times I've been on this commission, we've taken the basic amount that they had. We compared it to those other cities. And we made sure we asked the question, are they about to get us a bump in their salary? Because we meet every 2 years. If you're behind at the beginning of the 2 years, you're more behind at the end of the 2 years. And we also last time around took into account like how high inflation was and staff were getting big increases. The approach we used was start with the status quo and see how much we want to tinker, which was going up. And we were tinkering to some degree because to compare to sister cities means we think we're starting, probably, they'll be doing it a similar way, we're starting with the same goal. I think that's the word of the goal. The other way to think about it is, might require more of your time, is if you talked about the equity notion about who can run. And it's clear that the amount of, even if we take the council member who does the least work, if it was a part-time job, they'd make a whole lot more money. And so by paying our council members so little compared to the work they do, it means it excludes a bunch of people from the job. People who basically need a second job, which is quite a lot of people in this community, and who need substantial money for the second job, this would probably not be an option. One of the things that's been delightful in Bothell is we now have a city council with a range from, I think the youngest one is still a 20-something, but maybe he just turned 30. Mm-hmm. Up to, well, we've sort of got really different generations. That was not always the case. Often this job was for someone who's retired or someone who directly benefits from the council business. I used to see all these developers and other people on city council. So we have to sort of decide, do we want to go this route where we start with the model we have and we tinker according to what we see other folks doing, or whether we want to have discussions about something more radical that would argue not just what everybody else does next to us, but would argue from this equity perspective. And so I think that makes a difference. The second approach, the equity perspective, that's important. Obviously, we have a time crunch. That doing that's going to be tricky, and I don't know whether that's something you can help. I'm assuming that's something you can help us with. So we've got to be careful if we use that second approach, that we don't run out of time and get ourselves in trouble. And we don't go down a long, laborious rabbit hole and then go in the end, can't do it. It blew up another town when they tried to do it, and suddenly we have to go back to the other plan and try to prevent that. So that's sort of my background. But I know some of these city council people, and they tend, the current crop we have is highly responsible, it seems to me. And I'll leave it there. So you're nodding at me. Is that just because I'm talking and you're being good people and nodding, or you actually agree? but it's very rewarding in every way.
We're just giving you back the days of being a teacher, but like really.
I once had, this is an aside, I once had a student who had early onset of Parkinson's, and she shook her head like this. I knew she had Parkinson's, adult student, but I would watch her in class thinking, why does she disagree with me so much? Because I had to process it to actually see if it's you two have been great to me.
Well, I agree with you that we need to decide which way we're going. Personally, I think I need to absorb, process, and then I don't know how much time we have left today. But I think we need to maybe decide that with the remainder of the time. I don't know how much time we have left or what other items are on the agenda.
I'm here until you adjourn the meeting.
Oh,
Alexandra and Hay might want to go home.
so I guess the first question is, do we feel like we have enough information to make that decision today?
I think that I would feel better prepared and find more information with the second approach that brings in more of an equity perspective. I think that would open the door to more degrees of comparison.
Yeah.
I think that we can do that in a managed way, so it's not just swinging the door wide open. But that's where I'm leaning, is that second approach.
Yeah, my gut's telling me the second approach, but also I don't have enough information to confidently say, let's go that way. So yeah. I'm on the same
So
page as what-
maybe, I had just thought of this, it means the staff gets to do lots of work. So maybe we get the information that we got last year, we put that in our back pocket. So if we go down the equity route and discover it's a rabbit hole with no ending, we've got something we can do that makes it similar to what we've done before, and that's a highly legitimate way to go. But meanwhile, also, I'm just going to finishing my
No,
thought.
you're
Sorry.
fine. You're-
And
Sure,
so,
go.
meanwhile, we also play with the idea, explore the idea, play in a good sense of the word play, explore the idea of what happens if we rethought this. What would that mean? And is it something that's even feasible to do?
And what would that mean for future,
Yeah, well, that's
salary
complicated.
commissions? Yeah.
Matt had a question.
I think this is a really good discussion. If I can suggest something, with Rosemary's Path, it seems like we would send our consultant down the path of getting the data we historically get. The trouble that when I look at things like this and how do we accomplish this, I guess, policy issue as a city, is we often look at like, well, how has it been solved in other places? Redmond tried something, didn't work. Kirkland did something, and they didn't do exactly what Redmond did, but they obviously were having a discussion about equity. One of the things we can do is I can reach out to them and sort of talk to them about, how did this happen? What did your salary commission do? What factors did they consider? How did they look at the historical data versus, and come to this conclusion to make what I would say was more than a traditional increase for city council members, but not so much more like what was in Redmond, that it wasn't, it was successful. It got through, and those council members are making that salary right now. So I'm happy to reach out to them and see. So
what I don't understand is, and I'm not sure it's my business to decide,
Yeah.
or our business, which of you does the work, and do you negotiate that out between you?
Well, I think the bulk of it is.
We decide what we want,
consultant.
and you two go fight about who
Right.
does it. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I'm just offering to make a phone call to Kirkland.
Yeah.
And see what they say.
I would say even if there is information from Redmond that we can use as kind of the endpoint of our extreme scale,
Yeah.
to be able to kind of put ourselves on that, scale of either like the increases with what we've done in the past, or kind of this like very radical approach that's complete other end of the spectrum.
Yeah,
And what their proposal was is, when the internal politics, the city politics may be different from our city politics.
Yeah. But I'm
At
sure that
least
they,
what the
like,
proposal
the data that they have,
Yeah.
if they're able to share that, so we don't have to duplicate our work. Because I'm sure that they have looked at other cities, looked at why they came to that decision. So just, again, I know data sharing between cities, it doesn't always work super well. But if they do have that information to be able to share, I think that is.
So that's important
Assistance.
for this potentially new approach. For the other approach, we did what you said, we got the comparable, but we knew when we also found out, we asked you to find out when the next salary commission, their equivalent of us, would be reviewing that. And we also asked whether there was different, just a balance between the mayor and the city councillors, whether that was differentiated. And I think we ended up by only doing comparisons within the city manager form of government, as I recall. I can't remember what else.
yeah.
And
Well-
we did ask a question about staff increases, because they were very high staff, getting high statewide. That was kind of increases. I don't really have anything else we'd want to know, because it would be really helpful to have that at our fingertips should we go down the rabbit hole that doesn't have baby rabbits, which are going to eat up all my vegetables.
I would love to add in the like budget analysis of looking at the other cities' budgets and seeing kind of their activity levels.
When,
And would be useful to know about what our total budget is. I would like to know that as well.
Your total budget for
Oh.
2024, this includes
how close was
capital.
I?
Well, you probably were quoting the operating. So
Okay.
your capital was 188 million total. So that's operating. So that's the money that the city spends on an everyday basis to keep things going, keep the lights on.
How much
Plus
is that?
capital, 188 million.
Is that operating or capital?
Both.
Both.
Operating and capital. So capital is to build new roads,
Yeah.
parks, construction, kind of one-time expenses. And we have, like I said, we as a consultant have been looking at that as a measure of comparability more often than not lately.
So have you talked about this in the beginning and I wasn't quite sure. We talk about the complexity of the job. Have you or somebody else analyzed that for our city councillors? I mean, at one level, they are dealing with highly complex material. On the other hand, they don't generate it. It's generated for them. And so I don't know how quite to think about. It seems that if city council people do a diligent job, it's highly complex material. Because of the technical nature of a lot of it, in part by the laws and the zoning stuff.
Well,
I don't know how to think about that, because they have different levels of influence than you would if you were doing that sort of work in an independent job.
Right, and so for the city council members, that's one of the reasons why we look at cities that are similar in size. Because we can reasonably assume that they have the same levels of complexity. So, you're not gonna look at the city of Briar or something, or Duval, or Seattle on the other hand, and expect that those levels of complexity and involvement required are going to be the same. They're going to be different, but we can reasonably assume that a similar sized city as Bothell those council members are gonna be doing the same types of things.
Yeah, that is one. It doesn't stop us from talking to them, but Kirkland and Redmond are not market comparables. They are much bigger in all those categories. Well, they're not market comparables if you look at positions the way that the city has historically done it. They are much larger in all of those categories, but as long as we know that, you factor it in.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with talking
We
about it.
should talk about it. I mean,
And you're right, Rosemary, Alexandra, hey, and I will
figure out.
we'll meet after the meeting and say, this is what we heard, how do we want to do this, and we'll make a decision.
Well, and if we were to get more information on this equity approach, it would be really useful to know if anyone else, if other cities in the country are doing this. Because what they could be thinking about, and I don't mean an exhaustive inquiry, but I mean at least some level of finding out where the cities in, I don't know, the East Coast or Midwest where I used to live, are other people thinking about this differently? Because this feels like, I just thought of my analogy, it feels like we're thinking of raising by 5% the pay of daycare workers
Mhm.
who are living in poverty on the basis of their pay. It's not quite that. And we keep
It's
not
a
being
pizza party.
we keep not being able to fix it. And we might not be able to fix it. I mean, not everything is fixable in this world, that's for sure. We may not be able to fix it for a variety of reasons. One of them might be political backlash reasons. We might go, oh, we can't do that. We might lose our nerve.
One thing that I do know that exists is the state has started to bring in like community compensation guidelines for boards, commissions, committees. And so I think just,
That's cool. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
so there are now they're trying to expand that to bring in folks from underrepresented populations. This is not like every single board commission you get paid, but there is some information on that. So and I know that they did a process on how to equitably compensate people for that time. And it included I think there are some interesting factors and ideas out there, like childcare stipend or things like that, so that people can show up to the meetings. So I know that exists. I don't think that research needs to be done, but just having those files would be helpful.
So, I didn't know the state had done that.
Yeah, I think it's the Office of Equity, put out, I believe it is just called like community compensation guidelines.
They should apply that process to state workers.
You know?
And if they've done something recently, they probably refer to other cities. They might refer to other places that have used different models.
Yeah, I mean, the state of Oregon also has a community compensation model. Their like Department of Transportation is pretty good about how to involve that process.
Because we can't fix everything for sure, but we did talk last time we had a meeting of the kind of jobs you could have that you would never be able to be a city council person.
Mhm.
Is basically the whole service, a lot of the service
Yeah.
sector would be in that category.
When you work evenings, you cannot
Right.
have meetings.
And you don't have the flexibility to change shifts sometimes.
Yeah, another point, if we are able, is to look at like the composition of the council over the past 10 years, and kind of pull some demographics and then other information if we can figure out like, I know y'all are HR and this isn't supposed to be a question, but if we know who are parents, homeowners, renters, and if people are employed elsewhere, I think that would also, like, over the past couple cycles, potentially 10 years, if you're able to
I don't
know.
think we have any renters anymore.
Yeah,
Is,
but I don't know how we would do that other than look at the council members and guess. I don't think any of that would have been tracked. I mean, and I imagine we can guess for maybe the last 4 to 6 years and probably be close to the right, but outside of that, it might get difficult.
okay.
But
I know we've had a lot more young folks come on to the council.
I know. That's
So
been all the political awakening of Bothell in the last few years. It's astonishing.
yeah, it just seems like it is going to continue. And so again, 2-year cycle on this is awesome and it matches up. with
We don't
our-
have quite as many. We used to have, I think we used to have a higher ratio of tech workers, and it was one of the ways you can afford to do this is if you're a tech worker.
Yeah.
This didn't seem to be a very good criteria for serving on, but some of them, you don't want the whole council full of tech workers. But that's not the case now.
Are we allowed to engage any previous council members as well?
we can certainly ask them.
Representative Dewar, I think, would be an interesting ask of what, if there was anything to do with the compensation while she was doubly serving on city council and state representative. If there's any, I don't know exactly what the question is, but there's something I would love to hear if she has any input on that. I know that there are elected officials that have to serve on 2 different bodies because it essentially makes it a twice part-time job. And that is one way to be able to have 2 jobs at once, is if they're both.
Like apples and apples.
Yeah,
Yeah, not first.
they complement each other and are able to kind of mesh. But even with that, it's, stresses people thin. It's something that I think is interesting, especially since we did have it in Bothell before.
Would you like me to reach out specifically to her or like other council members? Here,
I mean, I would love to hear from other council members if they're willing to share how compensation was a factor in their decision to run, their decision to run again, or their decision to leave.
Do we have an email? Like, could we do like a, I don't know what it's called, like a Survey Monkey thing where you send like a pre-populated survey of questions that we could come up with. And then you could send out that mass email to all of the ones that had previously served maybe in the last 3 years, 5 years.
if they live here and if they have email addresses that the city knows of,
Oh, right.
like they
Yeah.
don't, once they leave, we don't keep their contact information.
It's,
Surveys tend to have about a 10% response rate.
and part of the problem is that this is potentially a political challenge for existing city council folks. The reason is, you look at the salary commission, how we were set up, so that they don't have to sort of touch us anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, just sort of go past them and they barely comment on it. So it's a little bit tricky to ask them. Well, I guess we could ask and they can say no, but it's difficult for them, I think.
I think that's probably all the questions that I have for right now. Definitely will think of other information that would be useful.
So for now, we need the current salary or not current, the,
Other cities.
of other cities, the current salary, mayor versus council member breakdown, any staff increases and budget of comparable cities. I think I'm missing something. You had listed a couple of things, something in between current salary and mayor versus council.
I can't remember what I think.
I hope so.
Well, I think, did you just say, one of the things that we did last time around was make sure we knew when their next review was?
That's what it was.
Because if it's a month behind us, that's very different than if it's 2 years away.
So when are,
Because we were pretty adamant that we didn't want to get behind here in Bothell.
so when are their salary commissions reviewing?
Yeah, or whatever system they use.
Right.
But I need some clarification. I'm not sure what we're looking for with that. What is it specifically that you would like?
So we just wanted to, I remember we had this discussion very specifically. We asked you to go get some more information, which is probably why you can't remember it, because you had to do some work for us.
Yeah,
It was annoying.
it's not annoying.
It could be annoying. So when we looked at the other comparable cities, and we were trying to be in the median, a little about the median, the question was, if we're doing all that in June, but 2 of those cities or 3 of those cities are actually going to review in September.
Yeah.
We're going to be behind the median, most certainly. That makes sense?
Mhm.
So it's just when their next cycle of reviews is going to be. Is it in 3 months? Is it in 2 years? Have they just put the salaries up? Are they going to put the salaries up?
Yeah, I remember what you asked for this before, and it's sort of
Yeah.
like, so when Alexander goes and gets the data.
Yeah.
Part of that data is when's your salary
Yeah,
commission meeting?
just to give us, because we only meet every 2 years, and we were also last time around, in a very high inflation, high wage increases in the state, in public servants, and much higher in the private sector. So that's just was helpful for us in the model of, let's not get behind our comparable, let's stay just above median and do that.
Right, so you're saying if they were to review in the same year that we would potentially change salaries, say by 2%.
Right.
Maybe we go 3% or 4% to catch up, to play catch up for when. Okay, yeah,
That's it. So it just depends on their cycle,
okay.
because you could be behind before you knew it.
And this is a process that we frequently deal
Yeah,
with because
sure.
we're doing salary studies at all times of the year. And sometimes they're very inconvenient because you're doing it at the end of the year. And so we'll often ask that very question is, when are you going to be reviewing salaries again? Is it going to be in 2 months? Did you just review it 2 months ago? And then we can kind of make some estimates. As far as inflation, cost of living adjustments, we typically use the CPI, and we can say, usually at the June CPI, for example, is a number that's commonly used. We can say, okay, this is what it was. It's
Yeah.
reasonable to think that in the next year, it's gonna go up by this much percent, and, we can certainly extrapolate that way.
Yeah, we bumped up the salary last time around a little more because of those conversations.
Mhm, mhm.
Because that data you got was very helpful.
I don't know if we necessarily need the breakdowns, but like when we get the list of the market comparable cities, if there is a way to know which are also like demographically similar, just so that we know.
You mean the
which-
council or the city?
The city, the makeup of the city is demographically similar.
So when you say demographically, which metrics are you?
I would love to do race, sex, disability, at least those three.
And I want to add age.
Yes, please.
Age is really important.
Yes, thank you.
So can we talk about that for a second? That,
Excuse me. I want to thank you guys all for.
Good luck.
You're-
Oh, it's gotta go home. You have to go home and work process.
We I have to do something with my dad's work.
oh, no problem. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah, no
really
problem.
appreciate it.
You guys are on.
Roll whatever you want to do. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just process ways, and we can talk.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a question.
Okay.
Well, and we understand, I'm sure we all understand that sometimes you can't get the data or you can't get good data. And then you have to make a decision whether you're going to use bad data or not ignore the bad data.
Do we have access to that type of data?
A lot of that data would have to be found with something like the Census Bureau or
Yeah.
the state, OFM. That's what we would look to. We always kind of err on the side of caution in using data that we make sure that we're not doing something anecdotally versus, kind of tested, tried, accepted, data. So we would probably look for sources like that has that information out there that is consistent across the board.
We also know, I don't know whether this is relevant, so if it's hard, it doesn't matter. The growth rate of the cities, is that easy to calculate?
We can track that through OFM, Office of Financial Management, that does an April 1st population every year. And they, we can say, okay, this is the percentage of the city has
And it's
grown.
easy to do, that would be, I think that might be a useful comparison as well. Adding new residents to a city takes effort.
I think in the Puget Sound region, you're gonna see
I was gonna say.
lots of them growing.
I'm figuring they're all going to be high
Yeah.
growth and not hugely different potentially, but it would just be useful to know.
Yeah, we have seen that growth rates tend to kind of follow each other. We have in the past, a salary study for Kenmore every 2 years, and we reevaluate the cities that we use, and they all kind of
Yeah.
typically
I
grow
would
at the
guess
same
that.
rate. Yeah.
Yes, there.
Is there a value in us? And I guess this is also a question for y'all. Do you think that there's a value in us, trying to determine cities that aren't on the market comparable list, that aren't like strong mayor cities, so that like it, just so that it is like fully comparable about like exactly what they do? I'm not sure.
What's the biggest difference between a strong mayor city
So-
and a non?
I thought that was an excellent point that was brought up, and thank you for bringing it up. That list that I showed you is the cities that we consider. The cities the salary commission consider have often been that list, but a shorter version of it for this very reason. We've just taken the strong mayors out. And the answer to what's the difference, it depends on the city. Some strong mayors have a city administrator. Some strong mayors, they're the mayor and the city administrator and the boss and the CEO and all of it. So it's not, it'll depend on the city, but primarily, the difference is the mayor in a strong mayor city is the CEO. And some of those strong mayors work full-time and they get a comparable salary, $100,000 to $150,000 a year, maybe. And some of them are strong mayors, but they put in 10, 20 hours a week, and city staff essentially runs the city. It just depends. And then with our system, they're council members with a few extra duties, basically. And so but I'm interested to ask this question about how many hours they think they work. Because they might tell you that's a 40 or 50-hour week job. I don't know. So we'll definitely share that information. Happy to ask them.
Yeah, and even with that, if it is helpful to break that down in like specific council, tasks versus like when they do go out and represent the community or things like that, like,
Right.
that's, I think additional hours, but yeah, being able to break down the two if that's easier.
I think, we're probably kind of, but it's clearly routine work that they do all the time, which is reading the packages and going to the meetings. And then there's, they probably work a little harder in summer. For
Yeah,
example, there's probably more community interactions and things. And then there's their other meetings that they have regionally.
So instead of, like a breakdown, this is how many hours you do with required city meetings. This is how many hours you
That might be
do
better,
engaging
right.
with the public. This is how many hours
And
you
do it for the last couple of months or two,
Yeah.
1 or 2 months, but restrict, I think that's helpful to have that because it's probably going to make them think it through a little bit more.
yeah, look at their calendar, actually figure out when they went to
Or be
meetings, things like that.
right.
The only other clarifying question I had is you asked about budget comparisons. Are you looking for like Bothell's capital budget and operating budget is this? Linwood's is this? You're just looking at the different amounts and the size. Is that sort of
Yeah,
what you
I
mean
think
by
what
that?
we discussed was we want the budget, operating and capital. Cause I think you had said that's more of like a better piece to look at is both of them combined rather than just capital or operating. And with that, we wanted to look at, was it like how big the city is compared to Bothell? So activity of people and expenditures.
And it would be really nice to set up a spreadsheet, a calculator of the percent of added all the salaries, added all the compensation up, and what percentage of the
Budget
budget
is-
that is, and as if we put different numbers in, how that changes
Yeah.
or doesn't change, to have that ready and available would be helpful, I think.
So, like.
I don't know what it is now.
Salaries percentage?
No, I mean, if you add up 5 council people at 1,300, 1 at 1425 and 1 at 1525, I
Okay.
didn't do that arithmetic yet. What percentage of the total budget that is, I mean, part of it is,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
tiny, it's 0.0
Yes.
It's gonna
something.
be like 0.5, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and so even if we multiply that salary by 5 times, it's still gonna be tiny. That's useful to know.
Big picture.
Right.
Yeah, and I,
Part of it is a
Yeah.
presentation
Sure.
strategy,
yeah,
if we decide to do that, but it's a reminder, because it can seem like, it could be, that we might not do this, we would give them a potentially large increase because we rethink this, but it's tiny compared to the total budget.
Yeah.
That's the part to keep balancing in our heads. But, the community might not think it's tiny and might be upset. Particularly if the potholes in their street aren't fixed.
So do you want compensation just for city council members?
Yeah, this is just
Not like look at the entire personnel budget versus
No, I'm
everything
just
else?
talking city council,
Okay.
I'm just like
Okay.
arguing the point, is it 0.001 or 0.00025,
What
or what is this?
What if we broke that down just a little bit more, where it's like, you said entire personnel, right? What if we were?
Oh, we could do that.
What if we
yeah.
looked at council members, what percentage of the entire personnel, what's their salary?
That's that's useful,
That's probably
Both of
more
those.
useful.
I'd like both of them would be useful.
Because it's like big
That's
picture, but then we like
That's
kind
right.
of
That's right.
bring it down.
Yeah, the management of the city is taking this pot of money, what percentage of it is, yep. We're good at asking questions. That's what we did last year, we asked a lot of questions. Anything else? So how long folks have to actually do the work? How quickly can we get the data, do we know? We've got some of it in 2 weeks, we have another meeting scheduled in 2 weeks.
we haven't, I think we can get some pretty basic information in 2 weeks. If we have to start going into depth and asking, surveying city folks,
It's gonna take
city
longer.
personnel, And I'm thinking practically because we have the Memorial Day holiday coming up next week, so we might have a lot of people out of the office. That being said, a lot of this data is just available on the website, so I think we can at least get the basic demographic information with, things like the budget, the salary information all of that's public and usually available on the website. And with the cities that we're looking at, we're not looking at, a small tiny city that doesn't have that information readily available. I think we should be able to get that. The thing that might be a little trickier is if we're actually going to some of these cities and asking, can you estimate how long each of your council members spend on, that might take a little more time. We should be able to get the.
And would you be able to get any of the data that we might need, which is qualitative data probably, about rethinking this from an equity approach, not all qualitative. So what the state did if they had a commission, and what the other two cities that we know, there's probably other cities out there in the country that have done that.
Yeah.
Because that's the part that's gonna take us probably longer to make that decision.
Yeah.
So if there's any way of getting any of that we could start that conversation. If we can't, we can't. We could make the decision that at the next meeting, we do the tinkering approach, and we know we have that in the bag. We've got it. We know what that would be if we tinker.
Right.
And then we went and played with the bigger picture to see whether we wanted to do that as well.
It'll be interesting to talk to Kirkland and Rittman. My suspicion is they don't have a process.
Yeah.
My suspicion is it's like, well, this seems right. That's,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to ask, and it'd be interesting to see what kind of, if they were provided data that was different than what you guys asked for.
And I'll mention too, I also did, I know the city of Woodinville went through a process like this in February of this year where they did look at median incomes, they looked at arch housing data and went quite in depth with that. I don't recall off the top of my mind what their outcome was, but I know that they did have these similar questions, so I am happy to reach out to them as well.
Yeah. I think the city of Edmonds also did a salary commission that they ended up disbanding.
Would be surprised.
I know people at Edmonds to call, so
And of course, part of which, it's not really part of that topic of the conversation, but part of why we all know things can blow up is actually not what they were researching, it's fighting amongst the council members.
Yeah, and I would love to know like what fell
But you
apart
need to
in
know.
that. Yes, what to avoid, what
To avoid.
Right,
where to step, where not to step.
yes.
That's super helpful.
Yes, for several
Might
reasons,
not
kind of
do.
we have plenty of great examples, I think, in the area of
So,
how far you can go too far.
So I just want to be fair to everybody. And do we think in 2 weeks we can come up with a lot of this?
I think it's gonna be a little tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be tricky. I think we can get the base level data, and so if you wanted to come back in 2 weeks and say, okay, it's always easier to start when you have
Yes.
something. So I think in 2 weeks is reasonable to say we can get the population, we can get the salary numbers, we can look at cost of living increases that they may have done for staff in the last year. What are their, some of that base level data, I think we can have in 2 weeks, and you can start, using that. I'm not sure about, like I said, some of the more anecdotal
Yep.
things like that.
That's all right, I think.
I have a question.
Mhm.
This is more specific to our roles. Like if we're here today setting budgets for, or not, setting salaries for the following. So when would the salaries go into effect?
Well, if you made a decision, let's just pick a date. Let's
Yes.
say your final public hearing was on August 15th.
Yeah,
They would go into effect if you increase them on August 16th.
right. The day after. Okay.
And then presumably they wouldn't be considered again for another 2 years.
Okay. So our roles, we meet every 2 years. Are we, is the salary commission going to be like reevaluated, like who's on the commission again in 2 years? Because then that makes a difference in, okay, do we collect the data now and pass it on to the next? So if we can't do it now, but let's do the legwork now so that, like, let's say in an ideal situation, we can't get the information in the next 2 weeks. but we are able to get the baseline stuff. We work and we do the tinkering approach, but we also work to get the information that we can and pass it along.
It's not gonna work, I don't think.
Right.
It's like an ideal, it's like an idealist
So
thought, but.
I actually emailed the city attorney about 25 minutes before our meeting today. And the reason that I did is because I went and looked at chapter 2.92 on our website. And it does not feel like it's the chapter that they just amended a few months ago. And so I'm wondering if, nobody got back to me. Well, I didn't give them a lot of time to get back to me, but I don't know if the most recent version of it passing has been put up, and I don't know how that, I have to talk to the city clerk. Like, I don't know if they do it in quarters or how they update the municipal code online. And the reason that I bring that up is because one of them says 2 years and the other one says 4 years. When Rosemary and I, we made changes to the ordinance a while ago, I believe we adopted 4-year terms, meaning you would do this for 2 cycles. And then could be reappointed too, that's an option too. But I will get you what the exact answer is, and when I figure out which version of the code is the
So I
correct one.
also, saw the discrepancy, which is why I was confused.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, and it ought to be, it's been irregular, I'm just gonna say. And COVID was a piece of that. The first time, I think they were late. I think the first time it was late. We were meeting, but it is, you are right, it would be better to be in a regularly scheduled, that we knew what, and one person drops off. They didn't have, for years, they didn't have the salary commission on the website.
well, when the first time Rosemary and I did this together was 6 years ago, and the salary commission used to only meet every 6 years.
Yes.
And I was new at the city at that time, and what I had gleaned was the case was the salary commission kind of met, and then it kind of got forgotten. And somebody else picked it up 6 years later, and it could be an entirely different staff, a new city clerk. And so it was like, what do we do again? And that's part of the reason that why we went to every 2 years is the commission felt like this is more important than we have to figure it out every time. And so we're still working through that.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not all the way, all structured the way it perhaps should be.
Right.
I don't know, the correct way.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point though, of intentionally using our rules to build some institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if there are ways that y'all can recommend for us of ways that we can
Can we write
use,
can we write
use
minority
rules to make
reports?
sure that there's something relevant.
Yeah.
Well, what we've done the last 2 times is we've done a staff report before the public hearing. So there's something for the public to read, kind of like what you did, what you asked for. Hay and I usually have developed that staff report in the past, but this year I think we'll get some help too. And so for your if you make changes, if you decide to make changes at that public hearing, the way that it goes is there's a presentation up front from staff where we kind of go through the process of what the commission did and kind of remind you what the information was that we gathered. There's a written report that we provide at that meeting, and sort of like what your preliminary decision was. And so that information is available to anybody that cares to look at it, and it's published online. It's like a council packet. It's 4 pages instead of 72, but it's published online and it's made available. And so that's a way of memorializing stuff too. And you can say to me at that meeting, the staff report didn't mention this or that kind of stuff, and we can add that stuff too.
So we could have a section on.
Yeah.
What we'd like to do in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is there kind of like, do we have the ability to, in that report or in our documents, essentially say, I think kind of what we started talking about of, this is the proposal that we're putting forward, and recommendations to investigate in the future would be this.
Yeah. One other way for you to do that is to show up at a city council meeting and put something into record. And I'm not I
That'll
want
make
to
it
be very clear.
That'll make
I am
it
not to
very,
encourage you or not discourage you
That
from
will
doing
make
that
them-
either way.
that will
That's
make
not my
them
job.
uncomfortable probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Well, the other thing is,
Yeah.
and this will be the last time I'm on, because I've been on this commission long enough now.
I don't know about that.
Thank you. But as long as one or both of you, if you wanted to stay on, we don't have an official rotation, I mean, it's a bit, the formation of the committee is a little sloppy.
Well, we tried to solve that and, the city attorney's office was involved in a rewrite and I was asked questions during that, but it was mostly managed by the city manager's office and so I read the document at the time, but, and how they were changing the code. But I'm just not sure that I'm
Yes,
looking at
so
the
we
most
would-
updated version right now, but I'll get that version
Right,
for
so
sure.
that's part of it. I think it's been helped because when I was on the first time, there was someone who'd been on before. So
Yeah.
it's helpful to have, and then Ben was on my first year. I mean, maybe 2 years, maybe 2 times, I don't remember now. Yes, it's helpful to have people who've been through it before.
Just to clarify for expectations, if we are to go the route of getting like anecdotal information, I think that.
And to go soon, we have another meeting.
If we were to get, well, let's just say in an ideal world, we want like the demographics of previous council members, like the packets and the hours of the meetings and or of the past week or month that they spend on. Let's say we don't get that right away, but we get it like halfway through, or like mid-July. Crap, I forgot my question.
But it was such a good setup.
Oh, I had it. Okay, I'm so sorry.
It'll come back, don't worry.
It'll come back.
Well, the approach I'm thinking of and is, just, I'm just gonna throwing it out there, is next time, if it's in 2 weeks, if that works for everybody, we come back with some of that baseline data. Who knows, it may come back and it shows that
Right.
you're significantly below everybody else, and then it's like, okay, we've got a material problem here, or you come back and it's significantly higher from everybody else, or you come back and you say, we're right in line. At least you have something to work with and say, okay, here's where we are now. If we want to achieve certain goals, how do we do that? How do we measure how that's accomplished? What have other cities done? And I think we should be able to have some data, some information about what other cities have done to achieve those goals. But it's always easier to talk from something.
Yeah.
And it's also helpful when you have the data in front of you to see what other data you
Right.
might need, which
Right.
makes people
Yeah.
crazy, of course.
Yes, yeah.
But that's, Is there anything else? I do have to go pretty soon because I have to get home and have to go to
So-
a meeting.
We would like to schedule the next meeting. We had talked about 2 weeks.
I thought that was on our calendars every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Same time, same place.
Well, I'm wondering if it makes sense for maybe, to give us an additional a week, to get as much of this data as possible. But I don't know how you all feel about that, and it's entirely up to you. Just a suggestion.
Let's see this.
That would be June 13th.
So instead of meeting on June 6th, we meet June 13th. I'm okay with, my schedule allows that, June 13th, I could meet, and then posing it to you guys, what if we met the Thursday before, just the 3 of us, to kind of have a, are we allowed to do that?
We're allowed to do that. That's
We're
what I think
not,
of it or not.
just checking, good
That
to
is-
know.
I guess-
That would be a violation of the public meeting.
Yes.
Act.
That's what I just thought.
Thank you.
It is that, no,
Right, it just.
we can't even have 2 of us or else it would be a quorum. which
Got
would be
it.
a quorum.
So
Okay,
you can do that June 13th data,
Mhm.
data.
Data and data. Yes, and I think we can send out information in advance for you to
Right.
look at, so that
yes.
you can review it.
So the next
I'm not
meeting is
sure
on
what
June
that would be.
13th.
June 13th.
Does that work for you all?
That works for me.
And then we have to decide, I put whether we're gonna bump all the other ones a week later or just have 2, and
Right.
the sooner we get this on calendars, the better it is.
Yeah. We can do,
You and I know that, don't we? We were literally like the 89th
We
day
were
last
literally
year,
the last-
or last time.
Somebody's car died. It wasn't
It
anybody's
was-
fault. Literally, somebody's car died.
Oh my God. Well, I can do June 13th and send out a 2-week calendar
Yeah.
recurring one,
Yeah.
and then we can readjust as we go.
Right.
Okay, sounds good.
Anything else? Everybody happy if we quit?
Yes.
I could say adjourn, but I might quit there.
Okay. This has been a really engaging discussion. It's really, thank you for doing this. Really, this is a lot of time and effort on your part. We appreciate your time. It's very important.
Thank you all for supporting us.
No problem.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
You too.
Bye.